Welcome to Rooted and Rising Healing. I'm your host, Hali Roderick, and this space is for women rebuilding after betrayal. Here we make sense of what happened, find truth again, and reconnect with who you really are beyond the pain. Whether you're staying, leaving, or still in the middle, your story matters. Together, we'll explore truth, clarity, and the quiet courage it takes to rise from the wreckage of what was into the wholeness of who you're becoming. You're safe to be here. In the messy middle, in the rebuilding, and in the rising. Let's begin. If you're a woman who's discovered betrayal and feels stuck in hypervigilance, emotional exhaustion, or constantly overfunctioning, I want you to know that you're not alone. That's why I'm hosting a live women's workshop called Boundaries That Build Safety, Reclaiming Your Power After Betrayal. This is a trauma-informed space specifically for women who want to stop over-explaining, reduce emotional reactivity, and create calm, confident boundaries regardless of what's happening in the relationship. In this 90-minute workshop, you'll learn 3 internal boundaries that create emotional safety and how to regulate your nervous system so you can actually hold them with clarity and confidence. So join me Thursday, April 30th at 6 p.m. Pacific. This is a women's-only workshop, and you can register using the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and imagine standing at the rim of the Grand Canyon. The vastness and the beauty of it just stops you cold. It's bigger than anything your mind could even prepare you for. The colors, the red, the gold, the shadows, they stretch down for what feels like forever. And somewhere at the very bottom is a river, alive, still moving after everything, after all these years. And that's where I was this weekend, and I couldn't stop thinking about you, my listeners. Welcome back to the Rooted and Rising podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. And if you're new, this is a space for women who are walking through the aftermath of betrayal, rebuilding trust, reclaiming themselves, and learning, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, what it means to rise again. And today I'm going to bring you something a little different. I'm taking you on a hike. This past weekend, I hiked the Grand Canyon for the first time. And from the very first step on the trail, I kept feeling this deep, unmistakable parallels between the hike and the experience I was having there and parallels to this healing journey that I've been on. So today I want to walk you through what I experienced and what I believe Mother Earth herself wants you to know about your recovery. Hiking is one of my jams. I love hiking. I love being out in nature. I love connecting to Mother Earth. And so the first thing I want you to understand, though, about the Grand Canyon is this. She is not a place to negotiate with. She's not soft or accommodating or trying to make it easy for you. She is fierce and she is ancient. And standing inside of her, I kid you not, I felt like being held in the womb of Earth itself. The energy is palpable. You feel it in your chest, you feel it in your bones, you feel it in your muscles. And she demands one thing above everything else, and that is respect. I watched men on this trail, strong, confident men, and I noticed something beautiful. They were not trying to conquer this canyon or Mother Earth. They were learning to with her because she cannot be manipulated. She cannot be charmed or bypassed or sweet talk. She simply is what she is, and she asks you to meet her there. And I kept thinking about how powerful that message is. She's not changing. She's firm. She's standing right where she is. She's grounded. And I thought about my own healing journey, and that's how I want to show up in my life. I want to show up as solid, grounded in myself, not someone who can be charmed or sweet-talked, and not someone who can be manipulated, and not demanding respect in a forceful way, but more demanding respect in a magnetic way, that I'm not wavering on who I am, that my boundaries are not negotiable, that my values are solid and they're not to be crossed. And that's probably one of my favorite lessons or realizations that I had as I was in the Grand Canyon this weekend. I also thought about how the whole canyon is not to be rushed. It won't be negotiated. It demands that you show up and you meet the canyon where it is. And so she will nurture you. I felt very nurtured. And she will show you unimaginable beauty, but on her terms, not yours. And there's something so freeing about surrendering to that. We can be nurturing. We can be beautiful on our terms, not somebody else's. We're not bending ourselves to accommodate others. We are identifying who we are. We are anchoring ourselves in that, and we're showing up in that magnetic way. So there's a few lessons that I learned on the trail, and I want to share them with you and see if you can make some relation to this as well. The first one is that at times I had to keep my eyes on the next step, not the summit. I couldn't help but occasionally look up towards the top just because it was so incredible and just enjoy the awe of it all. And in the moments when I would look at the top and I was feeling the heat and I was feeling the tiredness and my legs were burning and my heart was pounding out of my chest, it would be easy to feel overwhelmed and looking at the top like it was impossible, that I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get there. And in those moments, I had to make a choice. Eyes down, next step only. And if you're constantly measuring yourself against how far you still have to go, it's going to be easy to lose your heart before you've even begun. And in your healing journey, the same is true. You don't need to see the summit. You just need to see the next step right in front of you. The next lesson that I knew I was going to follow, this was part of my plan, my safety plan going in. I was going to refuel before I thought I need to. Park rangers will always tell you that you need to stop and refuel about every half mile. For me, that meant I needed to drink even when I felt like I wasn't thirsty. I needed to eat even when I felt like I wasn't hungry. Because if you let dehydration and hunger sneak up on you, by the time you feel it, you're already in trouble. And so how many of us in our healing do the same thing? We push and we push and we run on empty and we wonder why we crash. So refueling is not weakness. Refueling is a survival strategy. We can't wait until we're depleted to take care of ourselves. The next lesson was that you should never hike alone. At the top of the Grand Canyon and anywhere you read about hiking the Grand Canyon, there's signs everywhere that say do not hike alone. This is not a journey that you take by yourself. And healing isn't either. Now, I did see many people on the trail that appeared to be by themselves. I don't know if they had other people ahead or behind them, but there were many people who appeared to be by themselves. A couple of them were women, and I saw a couple of them sitting alone on the side of the trail. One, I can remember seeing her in my mind's eye now. We were on our way back up from the bottom, only like 2 miles in from the bottom. And she was already exhausted, already discouraged. Nobody was beside her to say, hey, you got this. So I stopped to check on her and a couple others because we need to do that. Has anybody ever stopped to check on you in your healing journey? Or have you stopped to check on someone else? We need to stop for each other. Not stop our own healing, but just stop and check and just make eye contact with them and say, I see you. We're all fellow travelers on this trail, and some of us might be sitting down right now, tired and depleted. So if you know somebody like that, stop. Look them in the eye. Ask them. Just show up. Sometimes just that acknowledgement can be the thing that can help you get back up again. So the next lesson I want to share is to speak life over yourself. There were moments on that hike when I had to talk to myself, sometimes out loud, especially the last 3 miles. For those of you that have done it, we did the South Kaibab Trail down. Unfortunately, the river trail was closed for construction, so we went back up and did the Tonto Trail across to meet the Bright Angel Trail and hiked the Bright Angel Trail back up. And about halfway up the Bright Angel Trail, we're like 16 miles in at this point, 17 miles in, and the fatigue was real. And I was thinking of my daughters, who we like to hike with the grandkids, and our grandkids are little. We have 5 grandkids under the age of 7. And We have this little favorite hike that we like to do, but it's challenging. It's challenging for adults and really challenging for little kids. And so my one daughter's really big into affirmations. And if you don't know this or not, Snoop Dogg has an affirmation song. And when the kids start to get discouraged on that hike, she'll pull out her phone and start playing the Snoop Dogg affirmation song. And everybody starts repeating it. And I kept thinking of that. And you better bet that I was thinking of the Snoop Dogg affirmations and reminding myself who I was, reminding myself that I was strong enough for this. And what we speak into ourselves on the hard days of healing, they matter. That speaking to myself, I wasn't like yelling it out like Snoop Dogg, but I was speaking, I was whispering, I was saying it out loud. I was speaking empowering truths to me. I kept reminding myself that I'm strong, that my body can do this, that I'm capable, that I can do anything I set my mind to. And so speak empowering truths to yourself. You're further along than you think, and you're stronger than sometimes the day feels. So keep going and make sure that you tell yourself that. Be kind to yourself and empowering to yourself. The next lesson, and I think this is one of the most important ones, is to find people who have already walked this path. I've wanted to hike the Grand Canyon since we moved to Arizona 10 years ago, but it's been intimidating to me, and I haven't done it until we had a group of friends that said, hey, we're going to hike the Grand Canyon. Do you want to do it? And we didn't end up hiking with them at all. We all went at different paces from the very beginning. So we really only prepared with them and saw a few of them at the beginning, passed a couple on the trail, and saw them at the end. But the information that they shared with us in preparation was invaluable. And it took some of the intimidation of the hike itself out, because we had somebody that had done it before that was telling us where to park and telling us how to catch the shuttle and telling us some gear that would be helpful to have and what to expect and which trails would be good to take. And so find somebody that's a little farther along the journey than you, along the healing trail, and follow them. I knew about Phantom Ranch in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I've heard about it. It's a place that you can hike to in the bottom. If you're going rim to rim, it's kind of like, I think, about the halfway point, but you can camp at the bottom. They have little cabins and there's a store there. And in a sense, it's this beautiful oasis at the bottom of the canyon, and it has cold water and fresh lemonade. And it's the only place, I believe, that you can buy a postcard and put a stamp on it, and it will be carried to the post office by mule train. I think it's the only place left in the country that the mail is hauled by mule train. So, of course, we did that. But our plan was to just go to the river. We were going to go to the bottom and go to the river because we didn't know where Phantom Ranch was. And the day before we left, one of the people that we were preparing with let us know that Phantom Ranch is only a half mile past the river. Man, I'm so glad that I knew that, because had I not known that Phantom Ranch was only a half mile past the river, I would have missed out on experiencing Phantom Ranch, because I wouldn't have known I was so close without the guidance of someone else. So where's your Phantom Ranch? Find your therapist, find your coach, find your community, the woman who's already been to the bottom and knows what's around the next half mile and how to get back up. Let her show you what's possible. Let her tell you what you might be missing if you go just a little bit further. Let her help encourage you and keep you going and not miss out on some of the beauty of the journey. So along those same lines, the next lesson was, don't be afraid to go to the bottom. You can do different hikes in the Grand Canyon. There were people who wanted to just see part of it, so they would go partway, a couple miles down the trail and hike back up. But here's what I want to tell you about descending into the canyon. It's not the terrifying part. The most breathtaking, the most sacred, the most rewarding experiences on that hike were at the very bottom, near the river. It's actually hot. It's hotter in the bottom, but the water is crisp. The water is cool. And in the bottom, it's quiet, it's ancient, and it's alive. And so don't be afraid to go to the bottom of your own canyon. Don't be afraid to do the deep work, the therapy, the grief, the ugly cries at 2 a.m, the truth you might be avoiding. Sometimes the greatest reward requires you to go all the way to the bottom, getting cleared out at the root of things. Because you can't build something new on a foundation that you haven't examined yet. And if there's cracks in the previous foundation of your belief system, of your understanding of your self-care, you're going to have a hard time rebuilding something solid. So don't be afraid to go to the bottom. And every once in a while on that trail, I would stop and I would turn around. And when I did that, I could see every switchback, every twist and every turn that I'd already climbed. And I could see exactly how far I had come. We need to do that in our healing too. Turn around, look back, honor how far you've already walked. And most of the time you've come further than you even know or that it might feel in that moment. The next experience I want to share is that at some point on the way up, I had a Garmin watch on that was tracking my mileage and my pace and the time and all of that. And my watch died. And so I was no longer able to see how far I'd come. And in my mind, know how much farther I had to go. And I wasn't watching my pace because in my mind, I had a pace that I wanted to keep up with. But something unexpected happening. I stopped measuring. I stopped counting miles and calculating how much further I had to go. And I just walked. I surrendered to the process. And I actually noticed that I started finding more joy in the moment. I was able to be more present. I was able to notice things that maybe I hadn't been paying attention to. And I think this happens with our healing timeline too. Sometimes we get obsessed with how long it's supposed to take or where we should be by now. And it robs us of actually experiencing the healing. So when I stopped measuring, I actually started living the hike. Another thing that I did, I had trekking poles and I had them from the very beginning. I don't usually hike with poles. I like to say that I don't like them. And so I brought them because everybody says you should have them. And so I thought, okay, well, in case of emergency, or if I start struggling, I'll pull them out. So I did. I went almost all the way to the bottom. I probably had less than a mile of descent down. And my knees really started bothering me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to pull out these trekking poles just to see if they help. Because I was starting to get nervous that, ooh, if my knees are hurting now, I'm not even at the bottom. I could be in trouble. So I pulled out the trekking poles and guess what? The moment I started using them, I found instant relief, instant support. And it made me think about how many times I had recovery tools, I had healing tools, but I wouldn't reach for them. So think about what tools you might have and are you reaching for them? The journal you haven't opened for a while, the therapist you haven't called, maybe the support group you've been thinking about but haven't joined yet, that somatic healing that maybe you keep putting off. You don't have to wait until you're in the pain to accept support. So whatever your pulls are, pick up your pulls and start using them. The other thing is you got to remember when you're hiking the Grand Canyon, it is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Some people might treat it like a sprint, but I did not treat it like a sprint. I treated it like a marathon. I don't like to just get there and get back as quick as I can. I want to enjoy things along the way. So it's important not to compare your pace to anybody else on the trail. I watched people fly past me. I watched people that I had passed earlier catch back up, and none of it mattered. The only thing that matters is your pace, one that is steady and sustainable and yours. It doesn't help to compare ourselves to everybody else. And don't miss the beauty along the trail. Some parts of the Grand Canyon Trail were steep and brutal, and others smoothed out for a stretch. So I kept thinking on those easy stretches like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this easier part of the trail. Our healing is like that too. Sometimes there's seasons when things seem to be quiet and calm for a little bit. These are gifts, not accidents. So enjoy them when they come. And please notice the beauty along the way. There were moments when I looked up, and of course in the Grand Canyon, it's beauty everywhere, but you're in the desert. And there's a lot of cactus and a lot of scrub and sage. And there were moments when I would look up and I would see this most vibrant, beautiful purple or red or yellow or cute little white desert cactus in full bloom, right in the middle of the scrub and the sage. This little gorgeous, unexpected little burst and reminder of life. And our healing has those moments too. So don't be so focused on the destination that you miss those beautiful moments along the trail. When we were on the Tonto Trail, we came across these abandoned power lines. They were rusted, they were overgrown, completely out of use. You could tell they hadn't been used for years. but you could see that they at one point were what was bringing power down into the canyon. And I couldn't help but think about how those were like our old belief systems, old patterns, the stories that once powered everything in our lives, but now they're just taking up space on the landscape of who we are, and how now the power into the bottom of the Grand Canyon's been upgraded. And we can upgrade our old belief systems and our old overgrown thought patterns that aren't serving us anymore. We can lay new lines, new neural pathways. We don't have to keep running energy through something that no longer serves us. There was something else about the Tonto Trail. Sometimes the path of healing takes you on what feels like the completely wrong direction. So we're hiking on the Tonto Trail and we could see the Bright Angel Trail off in the distance, but the Tonto Trail kept like winding and it was taking us the opposite direction of where we knew we needed to go, towards the Bright Angel. It made us question, did we miss a turn? Are we on the right path? Are we doing the right thing? We were hiking away from what felt like where we wanted to go, away from the top, away from the trail. And we finally just decided to trust the trail. This is the first time we'd done it, so we figured the trail knows what it's doing. And sure enough, pretty soon it turned back. We had to go around this big crevice, this big canyon, and then it took us back towards the Bright Angel Trail, which is where we were headed. And as soon as we made that turn, I thought, and isn't that very symbolic of our healing path too? Sometimes we have to go back in order to move forward. We have to go back through that old ground that maybe we've covered already, or maybe we weren't ready to see something in the past before. So sometimes healing loops through territory that we thought we'd already covered. Trust the trail. Trust the process. Near the end of the hike, I saw something that I won't forget. I can still see it in my mind's eye. There was 2 women that we passed on the trail. One of the women had stopped in a shady spot on the Bright Angel Trail, a mile or 2 from the top. And one of them, I learned that her name was Mia. She'd stopped from exhaustion. Her friend walked just a few steps beyond where Mia had stopped, and she turned back. And she didn't rush her. She didn't shame her. She didn't check her watch. She just simply quietly said, "I'm right here, Mia." When I heard that, I almost cried. I was like, oh, that is so beautiful. There was no guilting, no criticizing, no counting down, just, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. And that is what community is. That's what my recovery sisters do for me. When I'm struggling and I need somebody to just sit with me for a minute, they sit with me for a minute and they just say, "I'm right here, Hali. I'm not going anywhere." And they don't shame me for needing to slow down. They just sit with me wherever I'm at. And I hope you have recovery sisters like that too. If you don't, reach out. I can help you find some. And that's what this podcast is too. I might just be a few steps ahead of you, turning back towards you, saying, "I see you. Keep going. I'm right here." So the Grand Canyon has been carved out slowly, relentlessly, over thousands and millions of years, not by force, not by rush, but by steady, faithful movement over time. Water and wind and patience over and over until the most breathtaking view was revealed. And that is your healing. That is you. Rooted and rising, my friend, one step at a time. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this episode touched you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And if you haven't yet, I would love it if you would leave me a review. It's one of the most powerful ways you can help other women find this space. And I'll see you next week, right here on Rooted and Rising. Take care of yourself. You're worth every step. Thank you for being here with me inside Rooted and Rising Healing. Remember, healing isn't a destination. It's a returning to your truth, to your voice, to the woman you were always meant to be. You have the power to rise at your own pace, in your own way. And when it feels hard, just come back to your breath and remind yourself, still I rise. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love if you shared it with another sister on the journey. And until next time, stay rooted, stay rising. You've got this.